Oh, yeah, I think it's all working. So, yeah, so welcome to the first show and tell on the taxi licensing alpha. And today we've got a kind of key agenda to go through the background. We will work through project background and talk to you about more why we're doing this work. You will be able also to meet the team. And he's going to be working kind of the team who is working on this project. We will also go through all the work we've completed so far. So it's include kind of Sprint 0 and up to date. So for the last kind of 3 weeks, we will also go through the delivery plan, the kind of next steps, and we will have some time allocated for questions. So if you have any questions to raise as we go along, please feel free to pop this in the chat. So we have a section enough time at the end, separate section when we will go through those. And without further ado, I will pass on to Alex to talk about the background.
Thanks, Olga. So I'm Alex Stone, a business analyst with Rushmore Borough Council, and I've been on this journey with licensing at Rushmore for a few years. We started this work with a discovery back in 2019-2020, where we were looking at a number of things with our license holders and in the taxi service. And one of the outcomes of that was there was a need for a way of doing things online, a digital service through which drivers could kind of manage their license. So we followed that up with an alpha in-house at Rushmore, looking at how we might deliver that, how we might need that need. The output of that was, amongst other things, a prototype, which we were able to put before our drivers, put in their hands and get some feedback. And that suggested that we were on the right track. That prototype also let us share that with some of the other councils here and beyond today. And that was well received as well. And then, 2021, we had the opportunity to put a bid into round 6 of the local digital fund. We were very happy to be joined by Basingstoke and Deane and North and Hart district councils who have a shared taxi licensing service, and North Tyneside Council who are joining us in this bid together. We were happy to receive an award of funding, and that was well met. And the title of this alpha at that point was Exploring and Prototyping a Digital Service for taxi license holders to manage their licenses. And that brings us, after a short procurement, to where we are today with Zazi, who've come in as a delivery partner to help us deliver this alpha. Back to you, Olga.
Thank you, Alex. So I'll go through to the next slide. So this kind of overview just of our team. So we have a blended team. We have some people working from Zazi, but also from Rushmore. We all work as part of one team, and they will see some of the faces as we kind of walk you through this deck. But just kind of to name a few people who's going to be facilitating today's session. So we've got Ariba, product manager. We have today with us Verity, who's senior content designer. We also have Bradley, senior user researcher, Ash, our user researcher. And obviously myself as an agile delivery manager. So Said is someone who's at the moment on holiday, but I'm sure you will hear from him during the next sessions. And so we've got Alex as our business analyst and service designer. We also have Craig on the team as software developer. So all the team, and I'm sure you will hear from all of us in the next show and tells. And I'll go through to the next slide, and this will be with Ariba.
Hi everyone, thank you for the intro, Olga. As you may have heard, I'm the product manager on this project, and so some of you may be familiar faces. We worked together over the course of the last 3 weeks, but for those that are new here, my role is to make sure that we are delivering value on this project, and we are constantly revisiting the project goals and ensuring that any activity that we carry alongside that matches up with those end goals that we'd like to meet. So before we kicked off the actual activities around this project, we had a period which in Zazi world is known as Sprint Zero, but in simple terminology, it's just a kickoff. And the uniqueness of this project was the four councils, or three councils, Basingstoke, Rushmore, and North Tyneside, kind of coming together and aligning on what those goals were. Next slide, please, Olga. So we kicked off the project by having a series of workshops over a course of 2 days. We explored what the problem space was, and then kind of working on what that problem statement would look like, what the alpha goals were. We spoke about who the stakeholders were, who we needed to keep informed, what the engagement plan would look like, and how we'd approach these different stakeholders. And then we have had a series of user research workshops and understanding what the focus of the user research would be, who our users would be. And we'll come on to those a little later in a bit more detail, but essentially we had workshops across each discipline to kind of align all the different councils together and explore the initial phases of the project. Next slide, please, Olga. So as you can see on my screen, it's a bit blurry, but we have got a Miro board which we can link off to. When we received the statement of work from yourselves, we had a bunch of statements that needed to kind of be prioritized and looked into. One of them being, cross-council alignment. The second being the ability to implement whatever solution we're presenting in local settings against the local councils, to be able to see the scalable benefits, and to always ensure that this design that we're proposing is a user-centered design. So after exploring those in a hybrid workshop and understanding what these statements meant to each of us as all councils together, we then were able to theme these into the categories down at the bottom, which is, simplicity was key. In the solution needs to be scalable and adaptable. There needs to be technical feasibility and integration, and it should meet the organizational objectives of the local authorities. And so those were kind of the themes that we're trying to tackle within the alpha, and it was really nice over the course of a day and a half, to kind of come to that alignment across the various different councils to ensure that we are tackling the right problem. Next slide, please, Olga. So what we did was eventually we came to a very succinct problem statement, which was that we believe that digitizing the taxi manage my license service will improve outcomes by simplifying the service. It will create a sense of ownership for license holders, and it will streamline the business process. So our goal within this alpha is to test a number of hypotheses against this problem statement, which are kind of what we derive below. So one of the hypotheses is, if we improve the visibility of the Manage My License service, taxi drivers or license holders will have a better understanding of what is required from them, because currently there is a need around them becoming more proactive in nature. The second hypothesis that we're testing here is to improve the desirability of the service. So we want to understand what is that makes a service desirable for license holders, and what would help improve the uptake of this service. And last but the most important one here is to streamline the business process, allowing the councils together, if there are best working practices that we can kind of come to together to kind of understand those and come to a more streamlined business service. So once we got those foundations and groundwork laid, it made it easier for us to then kind of take on, and we're now in the first sprint of work, and we constantly refer back to this problem statement, because as you can appreciate, the license holder space is quite large and vast, and across the different councils there'll be varying needs, but to come to a solid common ground was key to kick this project off on the right note. Next slide, please, Olga. As I mentioned, we also then did a various stakeholder mapping exercise. We kind of went around the room and got various names and names of teams that we're going to be working closely with, keeping satisfied and informed, and then specific details. As I've mentioned before, because of the size of the project requiring various councils interacting, this part is quite key in ensuring that we have the right engagement from all different councils, and we don't create any kind of bias between any councils. We have everybody's voices heard and taken into consideration with any recommendations we put forward. And with that, I believe the next slide I will hand over to my colleague Verity.
Thank you, Ariba. Hi, everyone. So the user research workshops, the week of the 17th of July, we held 3 two-hour workshops. Each workshop was around a different area that is pertinent to strengthening this project. Firstly, we defined the users. So the workshops that we had with each of you was the cornerstone of how we have looked at these groups and helped us to really understand the most important user groups are the license holders and the licensing team. We have defined each group, we've written descriptions and agreed the prioritization, breaking down those user groups further and the different license types once we've had clarity. In our second one, we detailed each council's license holder relationship and ways of working. As we remember, these sessions allow the councils to really let loose and think of what questions they want to ask the different license holders. To better understand the different aspects of the current renewal process. We internally later removed duplications which came out, which there were several, and we themed them together to see the best approach that we should take. And thirdly, we defined our research objectives. So recruitment for the project has to be exactly right. We don't want to waste anyone's time and we don't want to weaken this project. So understanding, defining, cementing the participants by user groups and separating into must-haves and nice-to-haves have helped us to understand our goals for recruitment, to also align with council goals, and also to figure out exactly what we are aiming for. Second to that is also that defining these research objectives also meant that we could understand each council's interpersonal relationship with their license holders and how best to communicate with our target groups. This meant understanding everything from social media usage to best times to make contact, numbers of drivers, operators, and vehicles in any specific area, and how councils communicate with license holders themselves at present. So in conclusion, before we go to the next slide, the outputs that you can see listed here, summarizing project focus, user group priority, and the user recruitment discussion and UR plan will all be discussed later throughout this show and tell. And so Olga, next slide, please. Awesome, then I'll pass over to Bradley.
Yeah, no problem. This slide might have been better following Ariba's, but I guess just to follow on, as a part of the workshops that Verity mentioned, we also held an initial session just to do a presentation on introduction to user research and what to expect from it. So broadly speaking, as a user researcher, me, Ash and Verity will be responsible for organising sessions with the users of this Manage Your Taxi License service. So that would be license holders such as taxi drivers, operators and vehicle owners, and licensing teams who will be arranging and organising times to run interviews with them to learn more about what their needs are and what kinds of pain points they have with the existing service, so that we can have a view to designing one that's going to work better for them and their needs. So we just did an introductory session just to run through the types of research methods we use, how we approach research, and to align on that from the start. And we'll be covering some of the outputs from these sessions as Verity mentioned, yeah, in a moment. I think, is it you, Verity, covering the next slide? Okay, back to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Bradley. So looking at summarizing the project focus, after the 3 meetings that I just previously ran through, we felt it was important to summarize everything that we had learned, as we, 1, wanted to share this with the rest of the councils, but 2, we also wanted to show the councils that everything that we had learned the previous week had been taken in after every single workshop and assessed, dissected, internally, themed appropriately, and that we were trying to make sense of this arena that we have no real knowledge of. We're very new. We are learning things every single day. So we thought that summarizing the project focus would show you that we have actively taken on board everything that we've been shown. So as you can see here, it says it explains in full detail the best user groups for this project for us to focus on, which are of course the licensing teams and license holders, the different license types, which itself was quite detailed, each council's research objectives and what each council needs, and those specific needs we also have to take it into account, and we do, and the participant criteria and how to access and to speak to their desired groups as well. I will now pass over to Ash, who's going to go over user group priority, sorry.
Hello, everyone. So yeah, I'm Ash. I'm one of the researchers working with Bradley and Verity. So as Verity just said, when we were going into the workshops, we were really trying to identify who are we targeting within this project. I think that became very apparent that it was license holders and the licensing teams. But then what we really wanted to do is kind of zoom in on exactly who those people are once we start looking into recruitment. So one thing that we did was we looked at what focus we wanted to give each of these groups. I mean, we would love to have spoken to all of these people and lots of people from each group, but just thinking about time and how many questions we had from each and the quality we wanted to get out from the sessions, it quickly became apparent that we had lots and lots of things we wanted to find out, particularly from drivers. So we put that down as drivers who are Hackney Carriage and private hire. We then had slightly lower focus on the operators and proprietors, so the vehicle license owners. That doesn't mean that we're not going to focus on those people. We definitely are. They're just slightly lesser focused than the drivers. We just had a lot more questions and things we wanted to find out from them. We also have on the right there the licensing team. So we've got it on a later slide, but we have been speaking to licensing teams too, just so we can get both sides of the story just around what that process is, pain points, opportunities, anything we want to find out. So as part of this as well, been speaking to the licensing teams. The next thing we were looking at, if you could go to the next one, Olga, please. Thank you. Was just doing some desk research. So while we were going through the workshops, naturally, we were meeting lots of different people from all the councils, and people were saying things like, oh, we could send you this across and that across, and we ended up having quite a long reading list. So some of the things that we were doing were just making sure that we were covering everything. The last thing we wanted to do was reinvent the wheel and start asking questions where we already know the answers to, or the councils might already know the answers to those things. So we were looking through things like the latest industry report. So like, for example, the Department for Transport had their statistics and reports that they send out yearly. So we looked through those. We also looked through the previous research that Alex mentioned at the beginning, just to see if there's anything really useful that was done in the previous alpha that maybe we could use this time around, and any activities that were useful on that side, just to save us from creating things from scratch again, if there was anything useful there. Next one, I think we've got Verity.
Thanks, Ash. So on to user recruitment discussions. So recruitment discussions with councils meant asking for more council-specific information. So where previously we had a few sessions with all of the councils together, these ones were split up so we could really find out what each and every council had and where they all ebbed and flowed. We themed the questions into 3, which was in-person sessions that they currently have, recruitment screening questions, and any specific criteria questions that we had as well. During these sessions, we asked questions around current reasons that councils hold in-person sessions, questions around drivers with different needs, because we are also targeting them as well, drivers who may have English as a second language, and how to have successful interactions with low digital users. We discussed different things from bacon butty mornings, which is one of the incentives that we are currently going through. However, we are also talking about having religion sort of like acceptive, like inclusive mornings as well. So we are still talking about incentives, if there are to be any, using drop-in sessions that councils currently have to speak to drivers. So that could be that if a driver's popping in to deal with some documents, that they also answer our questions. The number of drivers who attend in-person meetings for any of the different ones that the councils have currently, so safeguarding or anything like that. And also if councils knew the number of drivers that have specific needs within their taxi ranks or within their list of drivers. I think that's everything. So I'll now pass back to Ash for stakeholder interviews.
Yeah, so one thing some of you might have heard over the last couple of weeks is that we've been interviewing the different councils and the licensing teams within those councils. So we've almost finished Rushmore, we've literally just finished doing Basingstoke, and then we've got North Tyneside this week as well. So the reason we've been having those sessions is to basically do what we call process mapping. And that's really for us to try and understand what your processes are within the councils. So that could be anything from managing complaints, interacting with license holders, using uniform, all of those different things. And you can see on the right there that what we try and do is map each of those tasks out, and then we'll kind of document any opportunities that we see of things that we could try and solve with this project or try and help, any pain points that we want to try and address, and just like any systems and anything useful for us to note down as we go through that as well. And the idea of that is we could look at those problems, try and see what we can address through the prototype, through the service, ongoing discussions after this project, or just good things to capture. And then when we're looking at what we want it to be, this will come in really handy just to see what changes we've made and like what process changes that we're describing. So that's one thing we've been doing. We tend to call these service blueprints or service maps. So if you're hearing that term, that's what that map is on the right there. Some really early findings, hot off the press, that we've literally just been analysing is that I think we've known from the start the legislation and the documents that are needed are the same across all councils, but we've always said that the process might be slightly different. So some of the highlighted things we've seen that can be quite different is exactly how the different licensing teams chase drivers, like what involvement they have, how they remind drivers as well of the documents that need to be sent in. The processes around those can be quite different. And to be honest, just communication as a whole differs across the councils. So what that means is when we've got these maps, we've got a separate one for each of the councils, we'll be able to show where those differences are. All obviously work and there's no negative to it being different. It's just good for us to think about as we're looking at a solution around the prototype to make sure that it works across everything and how exactly that's going to differ with the new service. Next one, Olga.
Thank you, Ash. So as Verity and Ash have mentioned, we've been having discussions with representatives from the local councils just to confirm the approach that we're going to be taking to research, including the recruitment, as Verity was covering. So broadly across this alpha project, we're going to be going through 3 phases of research overall. The first one, as Ash has already mentioned, is we're reaching out to do stakeholder interviews with representatives from the different licensing teams to understand more around how the Manage Your Taxi License service works from their end, what the kinds of needs that they have, what kinds of pain points and issues that they have with the current process, to create process maps and service maps as Ash was creating as an output. And those should also inform the next rounds of research that we do with license holders, as once we have an understanding from licensing teams, from their perspective, the kinds of issues that they experience, we can inform that those can inform the types of questions that we ask license holders to understand more what their experience is from their side as well. So what we're doing at the moment is we're currently recruiting for a round of interviews that will hopefully be starting within a couple of weeks. from now with license holders. So that would be all of the priority user groups that Ash mentioned. And we're probably going to take a mixed approach of interviewing them based on the questions that we've identified as research goals, and also doing some initial concept testing of just testing the prototype that was created from the work that Alex did in the previous Discovery and Alpha, to see how the feedback on that aligns with users across different councils. And as a part of that, we'll be able to start identifying areas of improvement and gaps in the existing prototype for us to improve upon, so that when we come to the next round of research, we can show an iterated prototype with the license holders as well, to present that with them, to receive their feedback on that, and to make sure that the prototype of the service that we're developing aligns with their expectations and needs, as well as identifying any other further areas for improvement or issues that they might have with that. And then we'll be going through the period of final analysis and drafting up a final report that will be made available from the end of the project. So yeah, there'll broadly be 3 phases of research we'll be doing. The first one will be these stakeholder interviews. The second will be the round of interviews in 2 weeks from now, and then the round of prototype testing following that. We should be working on the analysis of that iteratively as we go through each round, so we should have more to report on the findings from that in future show and tells in these sessions as those interviews are conducted as well. If you could go on to the next slide. So as a part of the discussions with the councils as well, we've written up a formal research plan of that summarises basically everything that we've been discussing on this call so far. So the research plan includes the goals for the research, the types of methods that we'll be using, such as interviewing to answer the research questions, the types of users that we'll be targeting, the ways in which we'll be recruiting them, as well as some timelines. This research plan is just being finished today, so it's going to be shared it'll be shared with everyone within this call, following the show and tell, along with the show and tell slides. And also, if anyone hasn't had a chance to look at the previous presentation that we prepared before on introduction to user research, if there's anyone who hasn't received that yet, we can share that with you as well, if you just mention in the chat, and we'll make sure that that's shared with you as well. Next slide. But otherwise, next steps from here. So we'll be continuing the stakeholder interviews with the licensing teams that Ash mentioned. So I think from this afternoon, we're speaking with some members of the team from North Tyneside. We're just in the process of finalising a draft of the email that we'll be sending. We'll be asking councils to send out to their contacts of license holders, along with a screener for the license holders to answer, so that we're targeting the right people. So that will be being carried out shortly. We're just in the process of finalising the draft for that. Within the next couple of weeks, we'll also be working on a discussion guide for the round of interviews that we'll be doing with the license holders in a few weeks from now. So this will include the types of questions that we'll be asking them in those sessions, and that will also be shared for review once it's drafted, just to make sure that the councils have a chance to input into that and make sure that we're asking the right types of questions. And from once the screener has been sent out through our contacts in the local councils, we'll be picking people who respond to the screener to schedule them in for in-person interviews, which will be held at the different local council sites and locations. So that'll be for the in-person interviews within a few weeks from now. That's all from me. So I'm happy to take any questions at the end, but for now I'll hand over to Olga to walk through the delivery plan.
Awesome, thank you, Bradley. So the next slide is just kind of to show where we are in terms of our delivery plan. So it's a 12 weeks project, and we're currently finishing off week 3, due to start spring to tomorrow. So as you can see here, this kind of maps out the key activities across kind of various work streams that we're working on the same time. So we have user research, there's business analysis element. We also started looking in the technical options and kind of analysis and kind of architecture. Again, something we will be presenting in the next show and tells. And we're also looking at the user-centered design element. In terms of kind of key dates for you, kind of in next steps, so I've just outlined here the show and tells and the dates for those, so it should be all in your diaries, but if not, please do let us know and I will share the invite. So the final show and tell is planned currently on Tuesday, the 3rd of October. So I'm planning to get everything kind of ready, including kind of the recommendations and report ready by the date. And in terms of kind of next steps, so we start in a sprint 2 tomorrow. So this will be a 2-week sprint, and the key focus would be completing summarizing interviews with the licensing team. So that's been a very good progress done so far. We're also aiming to complete recruitment and start research with the license holders as a kind of phase 2 of user research. And also one of the other goals is around as a service blueprint, and we will aim to progress this for other consoles and have this completed by the end of the sprint. Cool. I think this pretty much everything, and bring us to the end of the session, and we would like just to open the Q&A with you. So there's kind of a few kind of starter questions. Starter question that we would like to ask our audience today is, how do you feel about the work we reviewed today? What excites you the most? What is one thing you would like to change? And obviously, how can we improve for future show and tells? How do you feel its content is relevant? Is there anything else you would like to hear? So yeah, it's pretty much like an open Q&A session. So you can raise your hands or pop the question in the chat, and just go back to the Teams and see if there's any hands or questions we've got. So any questions or comments or feedback, there's all welcome. So yeah, we'll get Alex.
Hello, thank you very much for sharing where we are today. It's really great to see the progress that's been made so far. So I'm looking forward to hearing how the research goes and what we might find. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alex.
We have a comment in the chat, and that Phil from the local district fund, that was a really informative and easy to understand show and tell. Well done all. Thank you very much, Phil.
Well, thank you. You know, I mean, I do sit in on a number of show and tells, and not least of all, you know, ones across the department and directorate as well. So for me, it just felt like, you know, coming in, not fully knowing everything about the project, had a bit of an overview. It was really informative. I thought that, you know, gave a bit of context as to previously where you were and then where you're moving to now. Great slides, I have to say as well, you know, not full of lots of jargon, not really over wordy. So the visuals and everything were, you know, enticing. So yeah, no, really good. It's given me actually a better understanding of your project and you know where you're heading. I know you're recording this. I think there's a real benefit if you didn't mind sort of sending it over to me. I think there'd be some people in the team who should find the time to sit and watch this. I think it'd be really helpful for them in terms of, you know, wider support further down the line, potentially if they also have this same context and understanding. And I have grabbed a few screenshots of your slides, but if you're also able to share the slide deck as well, that's great. I can't promise we'll be at every single show and tell you have, but I've got a note of the dates, and thanks to Olga, sorry, I've got all the other dates in the diary, and we'll be at them where we can. But if there's a particular one you really do need either our input or for us to attend, then do let me know. Thanks, all.
Thank you very much, Phil. Thank you. And yes, we'll circulate copies of this deck and the recording for you to view in your own time and share as well. And as Bradley mentioned, as the project progresses, the findings and observations will become more evident. This show and tell was more about laying the groundwork, aligning the councils to a shared goal. So it's not probably the more exciting ones, but as we progress in the course of the project, there will be much more observations and findings that will come to light that will excite people more. Alex.
I'm going to put you on the spot, Ariba. I'm going to ask you, what was the biggest fear you had going into this that has now perhaps changed a bit for you?
Ooh, I think the biggest fear here, and I touched upon this earlier on, was working with different local authorities, local councils, all together. I mean, there are, like I said, the licensing space is very large, and there are local nuances that happen across the authorities. And we walked into the first workshop, and I'm not holding anybody to the spot, but it was like we'll never align, right? There'll always be differences. But 1.5 days in, and I think it's safe to say that we all have a shared goal of improving the Manage My License service with taxi drivers or license holders at the forefront of everybody's minds. So fears have been dissipated slightly. I hope that answers your question, Alex.
Yeah, thank you, Ariba. I didn't want to put you on the spot. Nor do I want to wrongly big up one person over the rest of the team, because it's been fantastic working with you all. But yeah, coming into this, getting that focus has been really great, and I think it's reflected in the progress we've seen today. So thank you all.
So thank you, Alex. What other questions or feedback we have? Just wasn't here in the room. Is there any hands? I think one of the feedback we will be also keen to hear is just around the format of the show and tell, what kind of content we've shown, etc. So is there anything we see we can change or improve on? Would be great to hear either here, or you can always email this kind of back to us if you pop this in the chat. Ash, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm aware
Come
we've
in.
not got Rushmore on the call, but hopefully they'll see the recording. I just wanted to say thank you to all the councils. I think for us, from a research perspective, it was quite daunting at the start, thinking we're going to have to align everyone to get all of those workshops done, all the interviews done, and everyone's been absolutely brilliant from all the councils, making sure they've got time and giving us that space and patience while we're getting our head around terminologies, different types of license holders, and all our questions, because we had lots and lots of questions. So yeah, just a shout out to all the councils on that. You've been super helpful.
Thank you, Ash. Yeah, I'm sure everyone else sharing the team, I think we had an immense amount of support and from all the councils and kind of engagement as well. So yeah, thank you so much for all your time and input you invested during this first 3 weeks. Great, I'm just pausing once more. If no other feedback or questions, I guess we can just close it here, and I'll stop sharing my screen. No, nothing on the chat. Go. Oh, stop sharing my screen. I guess we can close the session then. Here, and yeah, thank you so much everyone for your time, for joining in. Again, you should all have invite. If not, please do let us know, and I will forward this on. And yeah, otherwise, yeah, we will follow up with the slide deck and the recording. To the rest of your afternoon.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Very much.
All good.
Bye.
Cheers, Olga.
Thank you so much,
Thank you all.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Take care. Bye bye.
Ash, were we going to be staying on for that chat that Ariba mentioned in the Slack channel?
I think so. That's why it hung about. But maybe she wants to do a different link, possibly.
Okay, yeah, sure, no worries. It looks like she's gone anyway, so maybe we'll check in with her on the chat.
Yeah. Ace.
Well,
Did the first show and tell, Alex.
Brilliant. Well done. I think I didn't want to say it there because it's I think we covered what we needed to cover, but it'll be nice when we get into more of the finding side of things, being able to share that more. It feels quite, this is what we've done from a process point of view at this stage. But that was well received, and you two are both brilliant at explaining user research, so well done.
Oh, thank you very much, Alex. Happy to hear that you thought it went well.
And sorry about the room bookings. I'm sure you've been invited to a few and you've had to scrabble around and find somewhere. So
yeah. The problem is because I was last in on Wednesday, so I come back in on Tuesday, and then my calendar's full of meetings, so it's a bit hard to get slots then. So I hope there wasn't too much background noise on my end. But...
Oh no, that was fine then. Yeah.
Okay, all good.
Super. I'll catch you guys soon then.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.
Cool. See you.